Good afternoon. So, several updates. Oish. Oh, what's happening here? There was a spillage, but where does it come from? Like, from... Oh, this is too hot. Like, I'm not certain what's the source, like, of the spillage. Maybe it's fine. Anyway, so we have 3 containers, so let's do the ceremonial lightnings. And so this is oil, just regular canola oil with material from like a good amount from the what I call alien container, and also from the bicarbonate containers. Both are seen to have a tremendous amount of neurons in it. Regarding the alien container, I must say that when I mess with it, because I used it like both like as a feeling for these the asteroids, but also for like it's actually very good like as a basis for crucibles, because it's mostly oil. But it's so it's contained ton of life forms. Like this wasn't actually demonstrated in many times the samples are not representative. So actually, it contains amazing life forms and huge ones, like very very big, certainly non-microscopic ones. So it should be very interesting to actually. Several are actually they are burned, like because I couldn't manage to separate it from the. So they are unfortunately they are burned, like very like non-microscopic microbes, but there are still plenty in it. Like it's not all of it like is done, because I also mixed it with the bicarbonate. If you remember, it is very rich in neo, the huge ones. And just plain oil, because so it will be lit more easily. So what I think I'll do later today is actually take like at least 2 more samples from this like alien container before I burn everything, because I really want to see the micros under the microscope. They are amazing ones, like very very big. And again, it's the most alien of all the alien containers. That's why it's called the alien container, because it's so, no, it's not only because of it, because of the shape, but it's just so you will be reminded that it's only like no oxygen and no pee, no water, just wax and oil, like crude oils. And actually, they were developed like the new was developed like very big non-microscopic life forms. So I'll watch it later today. So now we have these kind of 3 crucibles, and I'm working on the asteroid. Like typically, for such this is the most basic sculpture, the egg. I've created like hundreds of these, many with all sorts of artistic elaborations in many huge amount of styles, and mostly many were lost. But the most basic way is just to wrap like to wrap like the semen and the neojuice and the life forms with aluminum foil, and then with a layer of natural clay. I have 2 kinds, and then with another layer of synthetic clay. And the synthetic clay that I use is white, like white dust, which is of course I think there is a leakage in the smaller one. Yeah. Yes. So this kind of a course of action, if you ask, is much better, I think, than actually like throw it out, because first of all, if I get outside, I can be arrested. And I do go for groceries after I tell the manager, but I can't go to work too much, and and they have like a huge incentive to arrest me. As I said, the containers were stolen when I was under arrest, and while I'm here, I cannot be arrested. And although I should say that I feel that in general, this stuff is much more safe here than outside, even if it's on me. Like it's easy to steal it on me like outside, and here there are still some eyes that are several eyes that are watching. I don't know how effective they are in preventing catastrophes, but I do know that people like outside of Israel watch. Of course, if I'm arrested, then it's game over, because you will lose like all the eyes here, and it will be taken to the Shabak. So it's better not be arrested, but you can use it like as for ceremonial light, just as light. Now, a very important thing that I want to say is regarding the war. I have something that is very important that I want to say. This is related to the issue of U.S.-Israel relations. It's difficult to actually estimate how strong a military force is, because this question relies heavily on the type of the conflict and the political circumstances surrounding the specific conflict. And this was known since 900 years ago. That politics, war is continuation of the diplomacy in other ways. And that the objective, of any war is presumably, it's not always true, but in essence, it is much true that the objective of any war is attrition, is to delete or denounce not the correct term, to substantially reduce the will of the civilian, people that are on the other side, in the other side. It's not always true. And it wasn't always, and it's not it's certainly not true in the case of the Israeli wars that tend to be short, because Israelis, for many reasons, they prefer to have the initiative and to conduct short wars. And I've discussed it in a previous video recently. But one thing that I haven't mentioned should be mentioned now. Israelis, have conflicts all the time. So there is a question of what exactly is a war, and there is no strict answer for that. But here, in our case, mostly the number of casualties dictated that this would be called a war, and it's got also consequences. It's not just terminology; it has many consequences, and also psychological consequences in the mind of the people. But I would say that a major aspect of a war is that you in our case, Israel, use their legendary group of Nazis, which is their air force. Now, it should be said that they use the air force all the time because they are Nazis, so they are used to terrorize the Palestinians all the time. It's not that they are resting between wars, and of course they take place in any kind of military operation that is not constituted as war. But there is a major difference between, their Nazi operations and their supportive role in operations, military operations that are that are considered conflict or מבצע, as they say in Hebrew, but not a war, and the war. War is something completely different from the aspect of the usage of the Air Force, which should be the spearhead of the Israeli military. Now, there is always the question of how strong is the Israeli Air Force? Yes, they always like to say that they are legendary, and but what they are just Nazis. So how strong are they really? How good are their pilots? Because they have this legendary status. So the answer is that it's actually very simple. It does not exist. It does not exist. The Israelis do not have air force. They have zero air force. Again, what is called the Israeli Air Force is actually a nickname, but it's not really the Israeli Air Force. It is quote unquote Israeli Air Force. It is actually a branch of the United States Air Force. Now, in order to understand that, there is a critical aspect with regards to any Air Force that sometimes is not taken into account when you actually evaluate how strong an Air Force is, which is how long can they sustain themselves during a war, even not all-out war with many fronts, even relatively small war, but indeed a war what we see now against a group of teenagers in Hamas, but still a war. How long it takes until they ran out of ammunition, or maybe a better term would be what's the general term of both ammunition and missiles, armament? How long? And the second question is, can they manufacture more, or do they have to buy it from another country? And this is a decisive element in understanding how strong an Air Force is, much more so than even like the quality of the pilot, which is presumably legendary because they do all sorts of Nazi operations all the time, so it makes them like legendary. But this is much more important, like two much more important questions. How much they can stand even like a slight war, like we see right now, not like an all-out war, like like Yom Kippur, like in the north and the south with like actual countries. Just a simple, very simple war against like a group of teenagers in Gaza. But still, that like dictates the usage of the Air Force, like with all its like power, and not just in Nazi operations that are mostly to scare people and use all sort of like Nazi weapons. That are actually they do not waste a lot of like armament. So the answer for the two questions is that it takes very, very short time for the Air Force to be depleted completely of armament, and it was always like that. It was famously always like that, and it's still true, and that they do not manufacture anything in Israel. Yes, they have Rafael, but they mostly sell stuff abroad. Why? Because the Israeli Air Force is based on standardized, export airplane, famously the F-16, but also the F-15, and lately, of course, they have like the new, what's his name, like 35, but mostly it's the F-16 and F-15, which, and mostly, and more than the more important for strikes are F-16, even though the F-15 have legendary, dogfight capabilities, presumably something that was not surpassed since after that, but it's not really used because dogfights are, is kind of a thing of the past. So it's mostly F-16, which is the most standardized, like, it's sold like all over the world, and I already mentioned it like with regards to the Lavi project. It was also like a typical Israeli charade or a typical Israeli theater. But I already spoken about it. But it should be said that, they rely on standardized weapons that is sold by the Americans and manufactured by American companies for the purpose of export to their allies. And they're selling it to many countries. And they do not have, and Rafael they manufacture, missiles that are more specific to all sorts of like situation, like C2C missiles, things that and as I said again, the Israeli Navy is kind of like is like חסקה, זה כמה כוסיות כאילו, וזה חצי סירה, כאילו אין שם כלום. So there is no reason. So essentially, the Air Force of the Israelis does not really exist because after several days of war, even small war, they ran out of like oxygen and they need supplies from the Americans. And this happened many times. It did not happen during 67 for two reasons. First, they were not still dependent. They still did not have this dependency on the Americans. It was different at the time, and most importantly, they used like a preemptive strike, which set the whole course of the war and was mostly done with very simple weapons. It was like based on initiative, not like a sophisticated weaponry. And then they had enough and it was always and it should be mentioned that the length of the 6-day war was just 6 days. So very quickly it was over. But during 73, Israel was about to be annihilated, and the Americans sent like what it's called in the history of Israel it's very known, like הרכבת האווירית, like the air train, which means that Israel probably would have not existed if not that the Americans during the war of 73 sent during the war more like ammunition and armament or payload. I don't remember like the correct term, but kind of like there is a term that is kind of like encompasses all of the three, like armaments and like payloads, and never mind, but you know what I mean, like mostly missiles of all sorts of style of kinds, and it's like that today. So essentially this is an American Air Force because it's not only that they're entire like all their airplanes are American and they depend on Americans completely, but they never have like a lot of like ammunition or armament. They always have like very short like the ability to conduct very short wars, and the Americans are fine with that because they don't want Israel to get they know that Israel is like cool children and that they have like ego problem, and they know that if they have too much too much in the storage, they will start all sorts of maybe conflicts in Iran, or they will get over their head, like as you know that Israel they very quickly, I mean, you know, the piece, as they say, השתן עולה להם לראש, like the piece, I mean, rising to their head. It's incredible. I mean, mostly they are always with the piece in the head, but I mean, if it's not, I mean, very quickly it gets there. So the Americans keep it that way. That like very, very short time spent for the Air Force to actually be able to operate without the need for American refill, which might be sent or might not. But I mean, they are the bosses. This is the territory of the United States. This is a territory of the United States. And exactly this situation will happen maybe in the next couple of hours, but certainly in the next couple of days. Because even though it's just a war with, you know, group of like teenagers in Gaza, they still, I mean, they very quickly deplete everything that they've got. And then it will be very difficult to continue with the war because famously the infantry is mostly like in the toilets right now trying to take a shit. I'm not including all the like the caracals that are actually either raped or eaten alive by cannibals in Venus, which is actually very funny. I mean, you must admit, even if you are on the side of the Israelis in this war, like in the side, even if you support the Nazis in the world, you must admit that this situation is kind of funny. So they need Air Force, like even like just, you know, for the teenagers in the Gaza Strip, and they will soon have no more like no armament, no payload, and then they will ask their daddy, like, I mean, so please, I mean, Biden, please, I mean, you know, please, you know, send us some, you know, send us like another airtrain, and at that point he can say yes or no. And if he say yes and actually send this airtrain, I guarantee that in the next life, like in the afterlife, he will not only go to hell, but he will go to the deepest circle in hell. And this is a promise, like a divine promise. The deepest circle of hell awaits Biden in the afterlife if he will comply with with this request that will come in maybe in the next couple of hours, but certainly in the next couple of days.